But cops behind the scenes as human beings, there's so much more to them. And the humor, especially the dark humor, which is what I love to talk about, is the essence of who cops are. The more that people realize they are human and that humor's there, I think it'll help us out.
Welcome to Hey Chaplain. My name is Jared Altick, and I'm a chaplain with the police department. I believe that cops deserve more encouragement and want to help the officers who have wisdom to share to get that life-saving and career-changing support to their brothers and sisters in blue. On this podcast, you'll hear from detectives and dispatchers, U.S. Marshals and county sheriffs, and the occasional drug interdiction agent. From the LAPD to Scotland Yard, the guests on Hey Chaplain are sharing their wisdom and experience so that you don't have to do everything the hard way. I believe that there is a small number of occupations who carefully observe human behavior. Cops are definitely on that list. But so are comedians. I know that both groups make me laugh with all the funny observations they make about the crazy behavior in this world. It's only natural that some cops would gravitate towards stand-up comedy as a career. And I found one I really like in Vinnie Montez. Vinnie is a Colorado deputy who you might know from his dry bar comedy specials or videos of his other live performances from around the country. I asked him to come on the show to talk about his comedy and its connection to police mental wellness. I also want you to note how and why he's transitioning from law enforcement to his next career. Here's Vinnie Montez. Hello, Vinnie. How are you today?
I'm doing great.
Hey, I'm really glad I got you on the show today and eager to talk to you. I have not met very many cops turned stand-up comics.
Yeah, it's definitely not something that I thought was going to happen when I first became a police officer, but stand-up comedy ended up serving a very important purpose, and even to this day, it's the steadfast that's kept me sane and happy. And my 26 years later after becoming a cop, this is definitely the part that's kept me balanced in my life.
Which is the bigger influence on becoming a successful stand-up, or at least a happy stand-up, your background or your law enforcement career?
Wow, I think it's a tie. It's almost a tie. My family, my heritage certainly is a huge influence on it, but at the same time, the experiences that I talk about is being a law enforcement officer are definitely the original backbone to what I started doing in stand-up comedy. Now it's kind of transitioning a little bit into something else because I'm talking about things I might not have talked about in the past. So yeah, definitely both. It's definitely both.
Yeah. Well, I know a lot of cops, and I know a lot of cops that are really funny, and I think their job encourages them to be very precise communicators. And so that's really, I think, good training for what you're doing now.
Yeah.
Do you agree? Do you think that? You see that?
I think cops are hilarious. Like, I always tell those people, like, if you could stick a fly on the wall inside of a briefing and let people see how harsh, like, you want to talk about roasts? The best roasts that have ever occurred are in briefings between cops, just chastising each other. Somebody crashes a car, or somebody, did a call, fell down in a foot pursuit, and they ended up with mud all over them, or, they ate something and it blew up the bubble guts, whatever it is that those people can pick on each other for. And the public thinks, cops are, really straight-laced, yes, ma'am, sir, come over here, organized perimeter. That's great. But cops behind the scenes as human beings, there's so much more to them. And the humor, especially the dark humor, which is what I love to talk about, is the essence of who cops are. And if they were allowed to remove that filter sometimes and just be more of who they are, and I think truly in now in this era, today, where we're at in the country, I think we need to start leveling the playing field a little bit more and just showing a little more of that behind the scenes side, because the more that people realize these are not, cops all the time that are so rigid and professional all the time, but they are human, and that humor's there. I think it'll help us out, because I sometimes think that the average public thinks we're all together. Like, we all work for the same agency. We get together and we have meetings. Okay, whose butt are we going to kick today? And that is ridiculous, I've never heard anything like that in a briefing before. It's more truly how harsh we are on each other, because we just love using that humor to build that camaraderie, to bring everybody together that's on the team. And especially if you're new to the team, the worst thing you could ever say in a briefing, you're brand new right there for the first day, be like, I'm so happy to be here, very proud to be here, and everybody's gonna be like, oh my gosh, man, don't you have anything original? And I know when I was in Narcotics, like, the worst thing you could say the first time you were in a briefing, anybody coming in that new team, be like, I'm so happy to be here, I'm just so proud to be part of this group. I mean, nobody wants to hear that. Just sit there, be happy that you're here, but just fit in. But don't gaslight us with that nonsense.
Oh, I think the briefing room is a fantastic place to learn how to deal with hecklers. I think that if a cop wanted to be a stand-up, that just go in and try to tell your jokes to the people who work with you every day. And that'll be worse treatment than anything you'll get from a drunk.
I've done it.
Yeah.
I've done it. They just the worst is when they just stare at you and they're like, "You're a professional at this," Or people love to tell me, like, they'll snap me off. They'll be my heckler, and they'll be like, "You could take me on the road with you anytime you want. I could do this stand-up comedy." And I don't want to tell them, "Yeah, you could, and you'd probably be better at it than I would." But I got to save a little grace. So I'm like, just leave it to the professional. You have to be a good actor because you wear so many hats throughout a shift. Sometimes you're counseling people, and you don't really want to be talking about the subject matter that you're talking about, or you don't want to be in that situation, but you have to be. Yep. And then sometimes you're convincing people to seek medical treatment, so you're kind of like not a doctor, but you're kind of a medical professional. And sometimes, people need you to help figure out their problems. Like, there's some kid struggling with his math, or he's struggling with his homework, and you end up making contact with that kid, and he doesn't have a parent in his life that's helping him, and you're trying to help him. So now you're a teacher, and most cops, I don't think, are good at math. so they're struggling, and sometimes you just have to be a friend. But you don't know that person, and you're trying to find a way to relate to them, and they need you in that moment. So you have to adapt to that individual and where they're coming from. And cops are so good, and I use cops loosely. So I just want to mean anybody that's involved in the law enforcement profession, because we have chaplains like you, we have law enforcement professionals who are police officers, sheriff's deputies, correctional deputies, etc. But then we have the first of the first responders, who are our dispatchers, who are having that first link with the community. And then we got, some of the newest ones are the co-responders, right? So all these people, whether you wear a badge on the street, or you're representing the badge behind the telephone, or as a co-responder, or whatever avenue of first responder, we are all trying to be some best actors sometimes. And I've seen some really good, and it's not like we're trying to be like actors to not be genuine, but you have to be willing. I say actors are able to move from scene to scene, and that's what I think law enforcement is you're moving from scene to scene. You're one moment you're dealing with cows that are out in the middle of the road, which is very, very disheartening when you can't get cows to go where you want to. And I'm only speaking from experience. And then from that, you're dealing with somebody that's barricaded in a house, or somebody that's in a suicidal situation. Scene to scene, it changes, and you have to adapt with that.
Yeah, you've got to control not only how you feel, but what you say. Yeah, that's good practice.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Tell me, what kind of roles have you had in law enforcement? Just give me kind of a rundown of the different jobs you've had.
So I started as a law enforcement explorer when I was about 14 years old, and that was my first. I was inspired by Chips to get into law enforcement.
Yes.
Ponch and John, and I was able to ride with a lot of deputies when I was officers when I was a young kid, all the way from 14 to 21. When I turned 18, the agency I work for now hired me as a 911 call taker dispatcher, and I did that for 3 years until I became old enough to become a deputy. And then I went to the academy, and right when I got out, they hired me as a reserve deputy, and then a full-time position came open in patrol. But I was so excited because I'd already been through the training. I was like, I'm ready to go. And they're like, no. And they said, you need to go to the jail to get a little more life experience, which at the time I went kicking and screaming, if I be completely honest, but it was the best experience ever because I had some great mentors in the jail that really taught me about showing people to be respectful and to really give me that experience dealing with inmates who were seeing this young officer who was really officious. I'm going to tell you right now, I was pretty proud about being in that uniform. But it took me a lot of getting knocked down a little bit and learning that sense of humor, but able to understand the dynamic of my role. And then I was able to come out to the street where I was a regular patrol deputy. I was a DUI enforcement officer. I worked in one of our small contract towns for a while. I became a property crimes detective, did that for a while. I hated that job, part of my job. I'm not meant for detectives. But then I moved over to Narcotics, which was a detective role, but a different role, way different than property crime. And I loved it. And then I got promoted out of there to be a patrol sergeant, went back to Narcotics and supervision, and then became a commander in like 2018, and finished my career as a commander. I simply can't say in enough words how exciting and fun it was to be able to do what I've done in my career.
That's awesome. Let me shift gears just a little bit and ask you about your background with your family. What kind of family did you come from?
So I come from a traditional Mexican family. My mom is the boss. She is still currently the boss. She's 78 years old. Everything that she says goes. That's the way it is. My father, I lost him in 1999, right after I became an officer, and I was truly devastated by that because I am a living continuation of my father. He is absolutely amazing. He can light up a room, take center stage, have people laughing, and people truly love to be around him. So I'm grateful that I can carry that piece on as a legacy for him. But I came from I grew up in a very liberal town in Boulder, Colorado. I was always taught to be respectful of people, value diversity, value the differences in people, but be proud of your Mexican culture at the same time. And most of all, be proud about being American and where I am today and the opportunities I've been given. So very family-based, very strong family upbringing. And I'll tell you, most kids probably wouldn't survive my upbringing because my mom had that slipper and that chancla, and she was guiding my ways of growing up with that thing.
Did you guys grow up bilingual?
We spoke English primarily in the house.
Okay.
Like 100%. And my parents had a small cleaning company back in the day, and these people would call these people that worked for my parents would call, and they'd be like, "Hola, puedo hablar con la doña?" And I'd be like, "Oh my God, what is this?" So I didn't speak Spanish, and so I started teaching myself, and then I would go to school and went to college for it, and then when I started working in the jail, I had people come into the door. When I was working as a module officer, and they'd be like, hola, Montes, por favor, préstame los corta uñas. And I'm like, oh my God, what is a corta uña? And they would be asking me, where's the nail clip cutters or the nail clippers? And so then I really started taking everything that I had learned and like using it every day. And I really pushed forward there. So I really honed in on my Spanish. I took some other classes, and now I'm bilingual. I'm actually proficient enough where the department has certified me to be that way. But it's you pushing yourself. And I also like to muddle a little bit in Russian. Здравствуйте, меня зовут Vinnie, хорошо, пожалуйста. I mean, so you're always constantly expanding that mind, taking up. And if I can, and I love knowing different things in different languages, because if I can establish rapport with people, and see, that's what I learned from you asked me about my family. That was what my father could do, unlike anybody I'd ever experienced, and that was the ability to relate to people and quickly see them, engage them, figure out a way to make that connection, and boom. And guess where that translated to very important later on in my career? Dealing with people on the street during investigations. Yep. Reading that person, understanding the dynamic, and being able to make that rapport connection quick, because if I'm able to do that, I'm able to be more effective, maybe gain compliance where you need it, where it might be going south. And, Dad, I know you're watching that and listening, but, he's really the inspiration for me being who I am today for that.
So it sounds like your dad may be the answer to my next question. Why do stand-up comedy? Do you just not have enough criticism in your life?
It comes from a very dark place. We never talked about mental health when I was a younger officer. I never remember officers really debriefing how they felt. And I underline the word, the feelings, the things that were going on behind the scenes. It was always in the moment, right?
Right.
And I never remember seeing or hearing them say, man, this is really bugging me. Or, hey, I'd see things more like, hey, man, you good? Yeah, I'm good. You good? Yeah, I'm good. And a lot of talk of compartmentalizing. We're able to compartmentalize this. And so I grew up with that being like, for some reason, just intrinsically, I'm automatically, because I chose to go in this profession, I come with a built-in ability to compartmentalize, deal with, and compress down and compact all these feelings. And just by the mere fact that I'm in this industry, now I'm capable of dealing with it. And I fed myself such a line. And nobody ever actually had that conversation with me. It was just the things that I was taking from what I was seeing and hearing.
Just understood. Yeah.
Just understood, right?
Yep.
And I started becoming a deputy, and then people, as I'm in my early career, people that I used to ride along with, and Chaplain, I could name over a half a dozen, probably get close to a dozen of the officers and deputies that I work with started taking their lives, and it wasn't while they were working for the agency. Yep. It was once they had left the agency. Yep. And that started to weigh on me, and then I was doing what I thought was right, and up till 2007, 8, where things that I'm experiencing in the field are impacting me, and I'm just like, I'm dealing with this, but I don't feel I'm going out to dinner with my better half, and I'm seeing people be happy in a dinner setting, but yet I'm like, what are you so happy about? I'm miserable inside. You don't know what goes on the streets. You don't have to go to these calls. How dare you be happy? Don't you know what I'm sacrificing for you? And these things are going through my mind. Anger, upset, not knowing how to deal with the things that I'm building up in me and the things that you see, taste, smell, touch, and hear. So in 2008, I had an incident that happened where I actually lost my composure on a scene. I was trying to help a kid who had stopped breathing, had been in an accident, and it was about 17 years old. I couldn't save him. I blamed myself. And it wasn't that moment was so different than any of the other moments, but it was that moment that really pushed me forward to say, listen, I've got a problem with my mental health. Yeah. I've always had problems with overeating, probably, at points drinking too much in my career, different things that you use as coping mechanisms, right? And I needed to find a way to have balance because I was that guy that always worked. I was always there. People are like, why are you always here? And I didn't have, my sole identity was a police officer. And if it sounds like I'm just telling you all these things, they're like, holy cow, you're just like, yeah, this is who I was. And today I'm different. Stand-up comedy was that way out to find balance in my life. Yeah. So I wasn't copping all the time. And I had an outlet to take the things that I was struggling with and be able to put that out there. And I was so ashamed to talk about my mental health struggles that I thought people would judge me and they'd cast me aside and think that I wasn't anything good to be a partner on the street or a partner in the detective bureau or wherever I was serving. But I was so wrong because so many of these other people that I was surrounded by were also having things in their own ways and struggles in their own ways where they maybe not talk about. And some people aren't more sensitive and emotional, wear their heart on their sleeve like I do. They're just different. It doesn't make them any worse or better. It's just people are different. We're all different personalities. But the more I was able to share with people, because I am an extrovert and I love people around me, I get energized by being around people, the more I was honest with it and said, this is who I am, this is what I'm struggling with, the more empowered I felt and the more empowering I was to the young people coming into the organization to be comfortable with where they were at. And guess what? Here we are doing this comedy. And I've had a lot of people come up to say, Vinnie Montez, gosh, every time I'm struggling with something, brother, from this job, I watch one of your videos or I see something you say on a podcast, and man, it just makes me feel better about myself. And that was not what I was going for. I was going to heal myself. But guess what this fringe benefit has been, and that is to help other people. And guess what? That's who my father was. It makes me feel really good. People always say, man, you love to be in the center of attention. And I'm like, yes, but only because I'm giving back. Yeah. People think the worst thing you could do to me is give.
It's helping people.
Yeah. Yeah. The worst thing you could do to me is give me accolade. Oh, Vinny, you're good. Good, great job. I hate that. And people are like, how do you not like being the focal? I'm like, I don't like accolade. Please don't praise me or give me that. I just say, hey, we enjoyed it. Great. No problem. And the reason is people don't understand when I'm on that stage, whether I'm performing for 10 people or 2,000 people, when I'm making people laugh, I'm the one receiving that. I know I'm giving to them and I'm sharing this gift, but I'm the one receiving that laughter is fulfilling me. It's cathartic for me. It's helping me heal the struggles that I go through because I'm giving to people. And that's what my dad would do for people. And that makes me feel good about me.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Yeah, I preach every week. And so I'm teaching classes to adults. I'm preaching sermons in a church. And there are people who come up and say, oh, that was so good. You're so good. That almost makes me a little bit uncomfortable.
Yes, I love that. Chaplain, it does. I feel uncomfortable. I don't know what to do. Ricky Bobby is like, I don't know what to do with my hands. I don't know what to do when people give me compliment. I'm like, thanks. I don't know what to say. Like, I get uncomfortable.
Yeah, I've learned to awkwardly say thank you. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. You got to say thank you. You have to say thank you.
Yeah. But when they say, hey, that really helped me, I really learned a lot, then I know I'm helping them, and that does make me feel good. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, yeah. I would rather somebody say, hey, man, thank you. I really enjoyed what I saw tonight or had. But, don't be like, that was so amazing. Don't just, if I, keep it, because I get awkward. It's weird you say that. I get so uncomfortable with that. I don't want to make people sound like I don't want them to come up or say anything, because I do. That's probably, after the show, I love interacting with the people who come to see me. I love that connection. And the fun thing that I enjoy is people sharing stories with me that resonated with them based on what I talked about.
Yeah.
And now we go, and I can't tell you how many times people want to just be like, hey, you said this, but let me tell you this one story. And you know what makes me feel good about that when they're willing to share? You don't talk to people and share personal stuff with somebody you don't feel comfortable with.
Yes.
And it makes me feel good about me that they feel comfortable enough to tell me a personal story or a struggle that they went through. And for that, I'm very humbled and I'm very grateful.
Tell me about the first time that you were on a stage, that you did comedy in front of an audience in the wild.
So first time I ever did stand-up comedy was in June of 2007 at the world-famous Comedy Works in Denver, Colorado.
Oh,
that
wow.
is still my home club. I am a headliner there. It took me about 10 weeks to get my first set. They have this really strong vetting process. There was a guy named Deacon Gray who was our new talent coordinator at the time. He was amazing. He later passed away from cancer, and I love that man. He taught me the cornerstones for being a comedian were, and those things have all stayed with me. I got 2 minutes on the stage. They finally said on the recording, yep, you're going to get 2 minutes. You're going to get a newbie set. I practiced at home with a hairbrush, and I actually recorded that. You're in the new documentary coming out. I think there's a couple clips of that. And, I was really corny. I had the hairbrush. I was performing, getting my set together. It didn't go quite according to plan that I had rehearsed. But in stand-up comedy, especially when you're new, it never does. That's why you do open mics. And so they found, like, for whatever reason, somebody saw some talent in that night. And they're like, yeah, we'd like to have you back. And I continued with the new talent program until I was finally moved up to the Almost Famous list, where I got to open for headliners around the country. And then now I headline the club in Denver myself, which is absolutely awesome. Yeah. And it was such a lofty goal when you first started, and now that I do that and I tour all over the country, it's humbling, but it's I will be forever proud of that appointment and that privilege. Wendy Curtis, thank you so much for trusting and believing in me.
Do you have any comedians or maybe just other entertainers that you identify with, that you feel like, this is the same kind of person, same kind of entertainer, I'm a kindred spirit?
Yeah, so there's a lot. So as far as stand-up comedy, Bernie Mac, just because he was so, like, over the top, come here, show me some love. I'm pretty excited today because I've had a lot of good energy today. I'm a little more dialed down than I am usually that I'm on this podcast today, but like when I'm on stage, there is no doubt that I am performing. It's not, hi everybody, let me run a couple one-liners by you. Like, I am in your face. We are going. Let's have a good time. I'm alive. Like, I'm in the room. So Bernie Mac was the epitome of somebody that I just loved the way he come into a room and he command that room and you felt his energy and there was no doubt that he was performing. And then I also love people like Jackie Gleason from The Honeymooners. And that facial expression would say a lot about what was going on when you're watching The Honeymooners. For you young people listening to the show today, The Honeymooners is an old school sitcom. Go back and watch it.
Early television. Yeah.
I know, but go back and watch it. Jackie Gleason's amazing. And then he did the movie, Smokey and the Bandit, and he plays Buford T. Justice. Thank you, nice lady. I need a Dr. Pepper and a Diablo sandwich. You know what I'm saying? So he plays that role to another level, in that movie that makes the movie that it ends up being, right? And then there's stand-up comedians today that I love. Like, you listen to Kevin Hart, the way he tells a story, how he frames it. I love being that storytelling, but very dynamic in there with you. And then Don Rickles, he used to hang out with the Rat Pack. His timing and the way he would like slam people, even during the midst of his stand-up comedy, he was unapologetic and he just put himself out there, is amazing. And I take those people who are those dynamic. You walk into a room and people feel that energy and they know they're going to be entertained and they know that you're giving them 100%. I love that. And the inauguration for President Reagan, where Don Rickles was introduced by the character Webster, the little guy that used to be in that sitcom. If you ever go back and watch that clip, he's like, the little kid's like, Webster's like, be funny. And then he just like gives the mic to Don Rickles, and Don Rickles just cuts him off right at the knees. Not that he needed to because he was short already, but he cuts him off. He's like, that's one kid that'll never play basketball. And I was like, oh! And so... And then he goes right at the president. And that's so important because I use that. That taught me, especially, I will never forget, I did a show for the Colorado Springs Police Department probably last year. I was in the room full of people from the Colorado Springs Police Department, and the chief was there. And at one point, I went right at the chief. And what that did was when I went at the chief, I'm the only one in that room that could do that and feel comfortable doing it, right? I'm an outsider. I don't work for the department. He can't fire me. They've already hired me for the show, right? I mean, he can fire me mid-show, but I mean, what are you going to do? But I go right at him, and when I did, the entire room exploded, and when they saw the chief laughing, so any of you CEOs for sheriff's offices, police departments, any three-letter acronym agency, if you're going to hire me or have a comedian come in, you have to show your people that you're willing to laugh at yourself and laugh at the situation because they're looking to you whether or not they can laugh, and I'm being 100% serious. But the minute the chief busted up, he's like, I go, what's up, chief? Are you laughing? I go, is he laughing? And he's dying. The rest of the room just was with it. That show went to the highest level. So that's a little advice for the CEOs out there. I'm being serious. Don't hold back from laughing. Can't be in there and be a stiff. Can't be a stick in the mud.
Which is harder for you when you're on stage? Is it the heckler or is it the person who's just completely disinterested?
I would never know the difference if somebody was disinterested. And the only reason I tell you that is I don't focus on that. Okay. I really don't focus on anybody in the audience. If you draw my attention to you, then I will give you the attention that is necessary to deal with you.
Can you do your set without having the house lights up? Can you do it without being able to see the audience?
Oh, 100%. I prefer not to see the audience.
Oh, really?
Okay. 100%. Like, the brighter the light, the better. Because the better you can see my facial expressions, my movements, everything, the better. I don't need to see you to entertain you. I need to hear you to maintain the cadence. Hearing you is way more important than the toughest shows I've ever done in my entire life were during COVID. I was literally doing shows like we're doing right now. We're talking to each other via Skype, whatever this is. Yeah. And I had a screen full of like 100 little different monitors on my screen, and I'm watching people's dogs walk in front of their camera, their computer, and people walking and having full conversations. And it was hard for me to hear the cadence of what was going on. But boy, those shows sure got me to be better than I was then. There is nothing you're going to do in a show. You could call me out. I can tell you this, though. If you come up to slap me on stage, I'm not going to just stand there. I'm just going to tell you right now. You're going to go back. You're going to go back with a limp. Or we're both going to the hospital.
You've had defensive tactics classes.
Yeah, I've had defensive tactics, so I can't be held responsible. But there's nothing, growing up in, Wendy Kurz talked about this in the documentary, performing at Barca bars, places on Colfax, the places where nobody's listening to you while you're doing stand-up comedy. Matter of fact, they're heckling you and yelling at you, and there are these loud bars, and I'm up there talking about being a cop, and these people are like, who is this guy? We hate you, all this stuff. All that prepares you for being a better comedian, because none of that registers when you're entertaining. And there are always people, regardless if you're in a bar, that people aren't, it looks like they're not listening. There are people in the room who are. They are enjoying what you're doing. So you better be the consummate professional and be able to deliver at all times like that. And I've done some shows where I end up finishing out and I'm like, man, that was a tough show. But had I not gone through all that, and here's the what's analogous to is a police officer. I was talking to this right before we started the show. If you're going to get good at doing this job about being a police officer, I told you earlier, nothing good happens from that late person coming out. Everybody's downtown. It's bar closing. And we used to help out the city where I work. They'd have bar closing and some of us would go down there. And that one drunk guy would come out, hey, what are you doing, pig? What are you doing? Don't we pay your salary? And when I was a young officer, I wanted to go over there and deal with that guy. But you learn after time, just people talking doesn't hurt you. It doesn't matter. It's like a heckler. If you let that person impact you on stage, now the whole focus of what you're doing goes to them. And you don't acknowledge them unless they're simply out of control. but everybody else is still having a good time. And most of those people don't even recognize that that person is saying something, especially if they're right up front. The rest of the audience is completely unaware. So just go right over the top of them. And same thing about being a cop. Go right over the top of them. We choose to let people draw us in. So I've learned a lot. And comedy has also helped me recognize where I've been successful in my career as a law enforcement officer, but it makes me feel good about myself that I'm able to use some of those things back in comedy as well to, provide a better show and entertain at a higher level.
What do you do when that heckler is your aunt?
Oh, you saw that bit.
Yes, I did.
That was fun. That was funny. My family kept a lot from me when I was growing up. I think, because my grandmother, I guess, was a coyote at one point, and and I said, I'm trying to remember what I said. I guess I was a little on the straight and narrow, and my family didn't tell me this; they kept it from me. And she's like, "It was for your own good, mijo," and I'll never forget that. It was like, There's not. Let me just say, I couldn't say anything back to my aunt because I would have paid for that dearly later.
That's right.
But you acknowledge it. It's your family. People got a great laugh at it at the show. There's just times where hecklers are going to be funny, and if you don't take it personal, you can roll with it. And that's, again, going back to being a great cop. If you don't take it personal and somebody, I've had people, and I think, the bit where the story I talk about the kid at the college where there's a fight, and, oh no, it's the Popo. I'm sorry. He calls me, hey, Popo. And he's like, we're about to leave the bar. He's text messaging, we're about to leave the bar. Where are you guys at right now? Yeah. that kind of dichotomy of not taking yourself too seriously and being able to take a ribbing. And I've caught myself
being able to laugh at yourself.
I mean, I'm not perfect. I say something stupid on a call and they call me out on it. You roll with it. You laugh at yourself. They see you're willing to do that. Now you've bridged the gap. Move on. Don't take yourself too seriously. Don't make the badge something that it was never intended to be. The badge is simply there to identify you when you need to be officious for a real life situation where. Yeah. But aside from that, you want to be respectful of it, but you also want to be human and let people know that we aren't these robots and everything. And so, don't be so pretentious or, so self-absorbed that you can't have that little humor. Let that humor out,
Is there room for more cops to be in comedy?
Oh, absolutely. I think that people who want to go into this, I think that they should. I know a couple people that have and they've tried it. The thing I will tell you, just like anything else, if you go do it, some people might want to do it as a hobby for fun, and that's kind of what I got into it with to begin with. I didn't know where we were going to go. But just like everything else in my career, I've always stayed consistent. So I've always kept plugging away. And sometimes, you only have this much time to plug away at this week. And then next week you have a lot more time to plug away. And then sometimes I can really devote a lot of time to it. And now I devote an exceptional amount of time to it to keep my chops tight, to be able to do what I'm doing now. So my answer to your question is yes. I encourage people. If people want to give it a shot to see what it's like, there's nothing that holds you back from going to an open mic, getting up there. You only know if you love it by getting up there. And I know a lot of people in my work, they're like, oh my gosh, I don't know how you do that. How do you get up in front of people and talk? And I'm like, I just do, and I love it. And they're very terrified, which people are, to speaking in front of crowds. And so I think you have to just figure out what the right thing is for you. And you may just want to do it on a once in a while kind of basis, but maybe you want to record a special and you want to go out there and be the next Vinnie Montez. Oh my gosh. Or you might want to be the next Kevin Hart or something and do it. I've never been intimidated by anybody who, a lot of people tend to get jealous in the comedy world. I hate to be honest with you about this, but it's true. I've had a lot of haters, coming up who are like, what is this cop? And they're in the comedy world. I've had a lot of people who've also been very embracing. You're like, man, good for you. Listen, just like as you think that we have haters in law enforcement where people, I don't talk to cops, I don't blah, 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 whatever. You're going to get the same thing in comedy. You have the people that are very pro for you. They have people that are against you. Don't listen to any of it. Do what makes right sense for you. And the thing I will tell you on the flip side is always be helpful to those that are around you.
Yeah.
You don't know who you're talking to ends up being one of the biggest comedians in the world, and they could help propel you. but you don't know. So I've always tried to be very, very good to all the up-and-comers that are coming up because, man, I had great people that were that way with me when I first started. And, man, it's a lot of fun. It's a great time.
Last question. What are your ambitions in this career? Law enforcement's wrapping up for you, but what about the second career? What do you want to have from this?
Well, I'll answer that twofold. One is for my current job right now. I am in a new role as a PIO, which is new to me for just the last few months, and I am finding that I've been very lucky to take all the skills for video editing and production and entertainment and use that to help build our agency and show what we do, the good work we do behind the scenes of the different avenues of the agency, right? And then the second piece is I have a new special about to come out on Dry Bar. I want to get a Netflix special. I hope my documentary that's coming out this year that's being submitted to film festivals is going to get picked up. I never assume that anything is going to happen until it happens, and I'm just excited. I get to go perform with Gary Sinise Foundation in Poland for the troops in October. I am so stoked for that show. Well, I should say all 4 shows. Because I get to represent not only law enforcement, but I get to represent the United States of America performing for our troops. And that is a huge honor, and I take that very seriously. So for all the troops that are in the places that I can't pronounce in Poland, Vinnie Montez is coming to town, and I'm traveling with Vertical Horizon, and we're going to have a good time. So I don't know what's on the horizon, but what I can tell you is definitely on the horizon, God willing, I keep my health, everything stays good, is I am going to be entertaining people, and I hope people take the chance to come watch me and see what I can do on stage. And the other thing I always do in every single thing that I do is if you're struggling with your mental health, I hope people who are struggling like I was, and I still do struggle. Let me just not say that I'm perfect now. I have my days where I get wrapped around the axle and I got to take a step back. But if you're struggling with your mental health and you feel like you're alone, you're not. I was at the worst part ever. And I was ashamed. Well, I stand with you. And there are people to your left and to your right that want to help you. And if you're struggling, you don't have to be alone. Reach out to one of your chaplains. Reach out to one of your peer support, your employee assistance program. Heck, there's tons of avenues to reach out to people. And people want to help you. And you're not alone. And you have nothing to be ashamed of when it comes to your mental health and the struggles you're dealing with. And the stigma around that, hopefully we can get rid of it.
Awesome.
That's what I hope to see as we move forward.
Awesome. We can find you at VinnieMontez.com, right?
Everything is my name, whether it's on Twitter, Googlegram, Instagram, whatever you want to choose. VinnieMontez.com, VINNIE, Montez, MONTEZ, one word for everything. Follow me, share a video, comment on it, whatever you want to do. Heckle me, bring it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Vinnie. I know that there have been PTSD treatment programs for veterans that teach vets how to do stand-up, including actually taking them to a comedy club to perform. I know that this would really work with cops too, both as a therapeutic exercise and as a way to discover talent, because I'm telling you, cops are the funniest people I know when they're inside the police station. I have several officers who make it a kind of sport to get the chaplain to laugh at completely inappropriate jokes. But on the street, we see a kind of mask that's used to cope with stress and trauma and maintain a professional standard. Getting to see them behind the scenes, though, that is something that I treasure, and it's something that I wish the rest of the world could witness also. On the next episode of Hey Chaplain.
And in this phone call, the suspect that I had arrested, whoever he called, I'm assuming someone down in Mexico where the drugs are coming from, asked him if it was my name that made the traffic stop. And so I don't recall if he said Officer Foster or Deputy Foster, but my name came up, and the guy said, yeah, that's who arrested me. And this individual said, we need to take care of him and get rid of him.
Yeah.
And so that kind of spooked our jailer.
If you would, please make it your goal today to tell one person about the Hey Chaplain podcast. Show them how to find it on their phone. Make sure they download an episode. Encourage them to listen. The views expressed here, especially the funny ones, are the personal views of the hosts and our guests and do not necessarily represent the views of any law enforcement agency or its components. If you like this episode, please share it with a cop or someone who loves a cop. Thank you for listening to Hey Chaplain, and as always, pray for peace in our city.